Look at that. We are 8:30 a.m. Monday morning. Happy Monday, everybody. Week 3 of the live stream experiment. Mornings with Scott. Hope everybody's doing well. We're looking forward to a fantastic week. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Instagram. And then we lost our guest. We had a guest in the waiting room and he disappeared. So hopefully he will call back in. I'm just going to send him a note. He might even need a new link. Technological failures. What's going on? There we go. All right, let's get on with this. What do you do? What do you do if you're running a business show and you don't want to talk about politics, but the only thing that happens over the weekend in the news is politics? Well, I don't want to talk about that, but Biden is he dropped out of the election campaign. He is still president. And as they say, they Fredoed Biden. Do you remember the Godfather movie with Fredo? As Elon Musk tweeted or posted on X, they're taking Joe fishing soon. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what that is. If you haven't, maybe you won't know. So Biden suspended his campaign. He's still president after fighting for 3 weeks after the disastrous debate to stay in the job, with all of the Democrat political elite coming down on him and telling him he needs to drop out in the most tasteful way that they can do that. Yesterday morning, he announced his campaign stops for the week, and then in the afternoon, he resigned from the campaign, not as president. And as someone said on TV yesterday, I was watching last night, they said it's like bankruptcy. It starts really slowly, and then suddenly. Well, that's what happened. So lots of controversy. It's fun. It dominated the news. Again, I don't even want to talk about politics, but what else are we going to talk about when the news is all political? He resigned by posting on Twitter, on X, a digitally signed letter. He did not sign it himself. He signed it. He digitally signed, and we know for a fact he doesn't use that account. His staff use that account. So in fact, he did nothing. There's no picture of him. There's no press conference. There's no statement that can be verified. As Bill Ackman, the multi-billionaire hedge fund manager at Pershing Square, said on X, one would think that a letter to the American people from the president announcing his decision to step aside would not be signed using a digital signature and would be accompanied by a photo op and a scheduled conference in the morning that followed. Instead, we have a digitally signed letter released on the president's X account, an account we know that is run by a staffer. No photo, no live scheduled address to the American people. If I were China, I would invade Taiwan tomorrow. That's Bill Ackman, hedge fund investor. And as he later said in a separate tweet, he said, if this were a hostage situation, this letter would not qualify as proof of life. So Biden resigns, and after securing the votes of 14 million Americans went to some sort of voting station, put a little X in the circle to vote for Biden in the primaries. Yet he's out. And now the so-called elites take over. I have no idea who they are, but that's what they say in the news. And they're immediately anointing Kamala Harris as the person to follow up. But it is not clear. This turmoil is just going to continue all summer. It's not clear that she's going to survive this either. She's the least popular vice president ever. She has never connected with voters outside of her San Francisco roots. She's failed everything she's ever tried to run as a campaign on federally. And most importantly, she has not been endorsed by Biden, Pelosi, or the Clintons, who really are controlling all the shots in that party. So that'll be interesting. I don't think she's going to be the ultimate nominee, but we will see. But here's some predictions for you. At the end of the day, we're just trying to understand what's going on in the world, maybe have some fun with it and see how it impacts our business and our lives. But and enjoy the entertainment, obviously. But here's some predictions for you. It will leak. It will leak that some dollars went to Biden to resign from the campaign. That's for sure. He needs money. We know he needs money. We know the grift is over. He's not going to be able to do whatever he's been doing. I'm not going to make much allegations here on live stream and get my account banned, but he's not going to be able to do what he was doing. And what's he going to do? He's not going to go on a speaking career. He needs some cash for sure, and cannot implement what other retired politicians have done. And so for sure, it's going to leak that he got some cash as part of this deal, and that he got some protection for Hunter and the rest of the family. Or maybe now he's a lame duck president. Maybe he's just going to pardon everybody. Further, he will be pressured to resign. Kamala Harris is a weak candidate. She would be much stronger if she were the incumbent. She could be the incumbent. If Biden resigned right now, she would become president. That would give her some talking points and some experience. And since this isn't about votes, it's about retaining control for the Democrats, that's what's going to happen. The drama will continue. And why are we not going to get sucked into this? It's July and August. There's nothing else exciting to talk about in the business world. Everybody's on holiday. It's going to be fun, and it's still going to be a close election. If you're on the right side of the aisle and you think this is a slam dunk, you're wrong. It's going to be a very, very close election. I've been telling you all on this show that I'm very bearish in the real world. I'm bearish about the economy, the prospects globally, particularly in the US, particularly in Canada. The Globe and Mail, which I've told you before, is Canada's version of the Wall Street Journal, reported on the weekend that Canadians reined in their spending in May as retail sales dropped 0.8%. Sales were lower in 8 of the 9 subsectors tracked by Statistics Canada. The core retail sales, which exclude gas stations and motor vehicle parts dealers. Why do we exclude motor vehicle parts dealer? That seems like a weird thing to back out of core inflation. So that was core retail sales. So core was down 1.4%. You know, as a business owner, as an investor, as someone who views the economy, I always find it useful and as a prediction tool to think of the economy as a huge confidence game. It's just a confidence game. When consumers feel confident in the future, not even necessarily in today, but they feel confident in the future, they buy goods and they buy services, and the economy grows. Same in business. If we're feeling confident about where we are in the business cycle, we'll go spend some money on capital expenditures. I have a guest coming up shortly who will tell us what he sees in the business world on this front. But it's a confidence game. So when we feel confident, we spend money, the economy grows. And when we don't feel confident, when there's political rest everywhere, and we spend our weekend looking at presidents that are resigning from campaigns, we're not as confident and we stop buying and the economy shrinks. The economy globally is lacking confidence right now. And further evidence of that, also reported on the weekend that the Bank of Canada is expected to lower rates again, interest rates again this month. I think Wednesday they come out with that. So the central bank a month ago lowered rates a quarter of a point from 5 to 4.75%, which was the first cut in 4 years. I do not believe that they've cut rates in the US at all at this time. And as we talked about last week on the inflation side, when inflation goes up, which is a horrible thing for the entire population and their ability to feed themselves and pay rents and all that sort of stuff, it's a supply and demand imbalance. And one of the ways to fix that is to crush demand. And one of the ways to crush demand until you get to an imbalance is to raise interest rates. That is a go-to tool for central banks, and that's what's happened. And when inflation starts to ease, they lower the interest rate. So it's been a bit of a good sign from that perspective that if they're lowering interest rates, it means that inflation is starting to ease in Canada, but not the US. They're not lowering interest rates yet, and certainly that will be good for business. Now, I have been working with this StreamYard live stream to try to figure out if I'm able to bring in live guests. And this is our first experiment with that, with my good friend, who, by the way, was also my first ever guest on the Martinis with Scott show way back when. So Tom is my guy. Tom Klausen of Viking Finance and Advisory, True Viking Finance out of Vancouver, although not out of Vancouver today. That's what we're going to talk about. An advisory and lending company based in North Vancouver, 30 years experience, financial industry, specializes in alternative lending solutions for small to medium-sized businesses. Tom's approach emphasizes the use of debt financing over equity financing. Somewhere on the internet, you will find a debate between Tom and I on debt over equity. It was a fun debate, aiming to help business owners grow their enterprises without diluting ownership. Tom, welcome to the show as my first live guest.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, this is great. Great beginning, great intro. I'm looking forward to this, and good to see you again.
Were you able to hear while you're off stage? Are you able to hear me talking? Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
I'm watching you, hearing you. Yeah, listen to everything you had to say, and yeah, big news yesterday at 1:00. Quite surprising, I thought.
Yeah, I bet otherwise, so I lost money on that.
Oh, so. I think a Sunday afternoon, I guess, would be the,
Yeah, right.
Going to do it. Yeah.
Right. So, Tom, you are just tell everybody what you're up to, because you're on a massive adventure, and which is not typical of finance people. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical of a lot of us at this age and stage of our lives, and you get an opportunity to do what I've done. I have decided to sell the house and stash the cash, get a nice RV, and spend a couple of years traveling around on the road. And so we're doing a big loop. Moved in here in this RV in April 1st and started driving from Vancouver eastward. Winding our way through Fernie to visit you, of course, and Golden and Kamloops and Kelowna, and started on the Vancouver Island and right through to Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, over to Saskatoon, Regina, etc. And here we are in Toronto, and going to spend a couple of weeks here. I'm up in cottage country, headed down to Stratford, and then down to Burlington, and then I'll go over to Ottawa. And meeting people and colleagues. I've been in this business for 30 years, so I've acquired quite a few friends and colleagues in the business. And so I'm stopping in and reacquaint face-to-face meetings, versus this fintech. Hey, call me on, connect with me online.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like at first you might think, well, Tom's retired and he's going on this trip, but that's not at all what's going on. You're working all day, every day. I'm sure you're enjoying things on the side as well. And you're meeting in every one of these communities you stop to, you're meeting bankers and
business owners.
And you're getting a feel firsthand for the communities across the entire country and then later into the US, I think. Is that true?
Yes. And as soon as the weather turns, we head south and be winding our way down south, and then trying to figure out where we want to be on November the 5th or 6th there. Not sure whether Florida is a place to be, or maybe we'll
Depends who wins. So if you have a good crystal
I think either
ball.
way, it's that I'm not too sure. You want to be I'm a Canadian with a Canadian license plate. I think I want to be somewhere neutral, but no, it's going to be an adventure. It has been. It's fantastic. I think if anybody could, I was fortunate enough to be able to do this. And shocking people to, I'm not homeless. I'm just houseless, and I'm fine. And so I'm going to loop around, and we're going to, it's at that stage, you don't have much opportunity otherwise. Right. So this is and I can combine fun with business and get to meet some of these people that I've only formally met online. The odd Zoom. Now we can have a golf game and meet them, have dinner, have lunch, have coffee, and everybody's buying me lunch. It's just great. I try to. No, Tom.
Yeah.
And it's been very interesting to discover our country. And I've traveled to most of these places. My wife hasn't, so it's all new to her. But after COVID, it's been about 5-6 years since I was really fully on the road. So it's all new people, but the people that I know, this is my kind of shtick, because I'm all about AE versus AI, which is actual experience.
Right.
And so I have a network of people like yourself, Scott, who I know have the experience. If I'm going to introduce a business owner to somebody, I have no hesitation in introducing them to you in the specific situations that you like. And I've been tapping into the BDC. There's 32
So
BDC.
that's if I could just interrupt you, that's the
sorry.
Business Development Bank of Canada. Explain what BDC is. You actually know way better than me.
Well, it's not a bank.
We have a global audience, Tom.
Oh, okay, right. So the BDC was created by the federal government of Canada to, I would say, in my opinion, augment what the Canadian banks are not doing, which is to service the small and medium-sized enterprise community, the SME community. And I think that there's been a bit of an injustice served to the community, because the BDC, they can only do what they can do. They are term loan lenders. They used to be advisory, they used to be information, they used to be connectors, and now they are a profit center for the government. So they're very successful division of the government, and it kind of shows. And I've had a hard time meeting people. If I don't know somebody in a BDC office, trying to get into that office has been difficult. They don't allow people to walk in the door. You have to make an appointment, and they direct you to whoever they like. But using LinkedIn, that's a good tool to use to get to these people. And when you find somebody, and they're great people, don't get me wrong, the people work hard at the BDC, but they're frustrated because they don't have all the products that they need in order to serve the small business community. And I'm an alternative lending guy, so I'm a non-bank lender. I try to help my business owners find non-bank sources of financing, and they're out there, but we just have to make them aware of it.
How is the, in your view, what are you seeing on your trip talking to business owners and lenders about the state of the economy, the availability of capital? A lot of the private lenders are having their own issues getting availability of funds. The way it works for the audience of the business community is very often the private lenders that you might go to are in turn getting their money from bigger funds, from hedge funds, from private equity funds, from pension funds, whatever, some kind of fund, and they're allocating a piece of their assets under management, the cash that they have, to this sector being private lending. And I don't know so much in the US. The US has its own problems with the whole banking system and capital drying up for sure. But in Canada, we've had a couple of these private lenders getting themselves into trouble in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And as a result, there's been a pullback from that product line. And as a result, there's less capital available, I think, for businesses. What are you seeing, Tom?
I'm seeing that there's plenty of capital available. It's just that business owners need to understand that it's going to be a lot more expensive than what they have been used to paying. And,
right.
The lenders that I work with, they are mostly privately financed. Not many of them are institutionally financed. So their investors are looking for a higher return. And, so this is a vehicle. That's why a lot of money went into this, the whole fintech alternative finance industry, because these investors were looking for a premium return. And so, a lot of them mismanaged it. Their whole portfolios, they've gone down. As we know, there's lots of fraud. When you open it up like that and then you don't manage it, you are opening yourself up to a whole yeah, we've had a couple of big in Canada over the last few years, some big losses from lenders and investors who have it was outright fraud. And so the smart lenders are still around. They're still looking to do deals. They're more afraid maybe of losses, but there's so much. It's funny when I start in Vancouver Island where everything's kind of copacetic, and then you come into Vancouver, which is kind of crazy. You go into Alberta, and it's there's a boom going on there. It's like crazy. Everybody's building, and it's expanding. And I mean, Calgary's up to 1.8 million. It's doubled in size in 10 years. And Edmonton the same way. And then it trickles down as you get into Saskatoon and Manitoba. It's actually people are kind of depressed and negative and
interesting,
not as enthusiastic.
So Calgary and Edmonton that service the energy sector are back on a boom, is what you're saying, and everybody else is kind of
I think so. Housing is a big one in Calgary, right? And then there's more people moving to Alberta than moving out for a change. And there's from BC and from Saskatchewan, you see the U-Hauls are all heading towards cattle country and Calgary and Alberta. And I see, I'm bearish. I say, oh my God, we are small businesses. I see them forming and starting, but they have to understand, that they need people like you and I to help them to figure out the financing, because the tools are available. It's not the bank. You're not going to get prime plus lending. You're going to pay considerably more, but it's available. And as you progress and improve over time, you can lower the cost of your financing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of what you're working with, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you're working with BDC, which is not factoring at all, but you are working with a lot of the factoring companies as a alternative product line to help out really the smaller end of small business. Well, that's not true, but sub mid-market, if I can put it that way, businesses.
Under the definition of a SME is revenues under 10 million. I mean, that's what some people think. And that's probably most of Canada's businesses.
Yeah. Explain from a borrower's perspective, from an entrepreneur's perspective, how the factoring world works, because I don't think it's a common product in North America.
No, not in North America, but everywhere else in the world. It's called forfeiting and invoice discounting, and there's a few other names for it. Margining, and which has traditionally been the market dominated by the banks who did margined lines of credit where they analyzed the receivables and the inventory, and then they said, okay, here's how much we'll make available to you. And they never, they'd sporadically test make a phone call here or visit the warehouse there, but it was not monitored in any significant way. So it didn't work. And businesses were getting over advanced, especially in slow times like COVID, et cetera, when they continued to borrow money. And then the banks say, wait a minute, we've lent you too much money. Now you have to give it back. And the banks say, well, we can't. So I'm not saying that business owners weren't at fault for doing that, but if you offer an opportunity to somebody to take more money, every entrepreneur is going to say, yes, give me more money. I can use that. And I often say to people, it's not, I can help you put cash into your hands. It's how are you going to spend it? So I think that's why the banks have retracted from the small business market, is because it's high risk, high maintenance, and they don't like either of those two things. And so that is supposed to be filled by the BDC, or in the US would be the SBA. The US has the advantage of all the unregulated banking systems. So you got these small community banks who are offering these kind of asset-based lending services. And those lenders are here still in Canada. A lot of US and European-based lenders are trying to break into this market because they know it's underserved. And so therefore the rates have gone down, the service is up, and Canadian business owners simply need to know what all their options are.
I will say that you've introduced me to a couple of these lenders in the last little while. I've been really impressed
Yeah.
with their sophistication, level of service.
Yeah.
Just good people as
They know
well.
what they're doing. They've been doing it for many years, and they,
Yeah.
I don't know, stick to your rules. That's one of the rules of a lender is don't change. Don't make
Hey, I have a
exceptions.
technical question for you. I'm going to be doing
Uh-oh.
a coaching session, I believe, with someone that you introduced me to
Mm-hmm.
in the US, and they're a startup without any money, but they can get purchase orders in. Can you purchase order finance a startup?
Well, you'd have to show some ability to deliver, so that's the
Yeah.
challenge, you're certainly going to get people interested. The first thing is, who's the buyer? Who is issuing that purchase order? And then typically you'd go and get some credit insurance on that one. Although don't get me started on credit insurance, but that's certainly a good indicator that you have a valid PO. PO financing is basically unsecured lending because there's no value to a PO until those terms are met, to the letter. And
Right.
so, but once
That's a
you've
good
got a
point.
history of
That's
doing
interesting.
these, they like to
Yeah.
see 2 or 3 transactions completed successfully before they'll jump on board. But then the other part to a PO financing is getting paid. And so that's where factoring comes into play. A factor is somebody that purchases that invoice, and an invoice is really from a product that's been delivered or a service that's been rendered to a creditworthy customer. Now you have an asset, and my lenders will fund that asset, pay the purchase order financing company, and then carry that accounts receivable for the 30, 40 days. Meanwhile, the business owner has the cash in pocket.
Yeah.
And they're able to move on to the next transaction and grow their business. And a lot of people don't understand that if they could just, improve their cash flow and access the working capital, they don't necessarily need to borrow all that money that they think they need. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Those are a lot of topics for another day.
Yeah, probably.
Credit insurance is something I need to be talking about for sure.
I'll get you some good people to talk to.
And understanding a working capital cycle is also something that entrepreneurs desperately need. Tom, how do people reach you? And I think you have, are you still doing your blog?
Yes, I've been negligent, but I will be posting on LinkedIn, True Viking Finance Inc. I'm posting my travels for those interested on Instagram and Facebook. I would say reach out to me through LinkedIn, through my website, truevikingfinance.ca, through you, probably. And
yes, absolutely.
And certainly, I believe in a conversation is the best way to get a relationship started. And before you say anything about anything, you need to know what that person's all about, what that business is about, and what their objectives are, et cetera, et cetera. And you've been a great resource to me because you do the same thing. You talk to everybody first, right? And
yeah,
and we only tell the truth. You don't have to tell the truth. No bullshit, no blowing smoke. We just say, here's the way it is, and if you like, if you can afford it, if you wish to work with me, I'm happy to show you the way.
Excellent. Anything else, Tom, before we part? We're getting to the top of the hour here.
Scott, and thank you for the inaugural event here, and I hope this works for you, and I look forward to seeing you maybe in Toronto or maybe in Ottawa, maybe in Montreal. You travel around a bit, and maybe down in the States.
I do. I'm going to be on the road all week. Tom, I'm going to hit the end of the live stream, and you may still stay on the stage. We'll find out what happens. You may still stay on so that we can chat. We'll see. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you tomorrow. 8:30 a.m. Mountain Times is when we do these shows. And, follow along. Check out thescottsinclair.com, thescottsinclair.com. Register for the newsletter there. All sorts of good information and blogs and posts. And sinclairrange.com is the company that does the larger mid-market files, as everybody on LinkedIn listening to this knows. Thank you to Tom. Go check out True Viking Finance Inc. And that's it. I'm exactly 30 minutes. Bye, everyone.